Remember Thanos? The guy who snapped his fingers and wiped out half the universe? He was terrifying, compelling, and for a moment, it felt like Marvel had finally cracked the code on creating truly unforgettable villains. But let's be honest, since then, it feels like we've been on a bit of a downhill slide. What happened? How did the same studio that gave us Loki, Killmonger, and the Mad Titan himself end up with a gallery of forgettable, one-off bad guys? Today we're diving deep into how Marvel, in its quest for universe building and hero worship, accidentally ruined its best villains. It all starts with what I call the one-and-done problem. Think about it. Obadiah Stane, Yellow Jacket, Kaecilius, Malekith, the list goes on. These are characters with rich comic book histories, complex motivations, and the potential for long, engaging arcs. Instead, they get introduced and defeated in the span of a single 2-hour movie. They exist purely as a plot device, a temporary obstacle for our hero to overcome before moving on to the next big thing. This formulaic approach starves them of any real development. We're told they're a threat, but we rarely feel it because we know they won't be around for long. It's like speed dating for supervillains, and nobody wins. Now, let's talk about the mirror villain trope. This is one of Marvel's biggest crutches. Iron Man fights a villain in a bigger iron suit. Ant-Man fights a villain in a similar insect-themed suit. Black Panther fights a rival with a nearly identical suit and powers. Doctor Strange fights a sorcerer who learned from the same place he did. See a pattern? This isn't just lazy. It fundamentally misunderstands what makes a villain compelling. The most interesting conflicts aren't about who has the bigger laser. They're about clashing ideologies. A great villain should challenge the hero's beliefs, not just their strength. By making villains a dark reflection of the hero, Marvel often skips the hard work of creating a genuinely different and challenging worldview. It becomes a physical contest, not a philosophical one. And this leads directly to the next issue: underdeveloped motivations. Why is the villain doing what they're doing? Too often, the answer is a vague hand-wavy, I want power or want revenge. Take Ronan the Accuser in the first Guardians of the Galaxy. He's a religious fanatic, which is a fascinating concept. But the movie barely scratches the surface of what that means. We don't understand his faith, his people's history, or the deep-seated hatred that drives him. He just ends up being a grumpy blue guy who shouts a lot and wants to blow up a planet. Compare that to Killmonger, whose motivations were so deeply rooted in real-world history and personal trauma that some audiences were actually rooting for him. That's the difference. We need to understand the why, not just the what. Without a clear and compelling motivation, a villain is just a CGI-heavy punching bag. Another huge factor is Marvel's relentless focus on the heroes. This makes sense, they are the stars, but it comes at a cost. The MCU is built around its heroes' journeys. The story is always about their growth, their struggles, their triumphs. Villains are secondary, often tertiary characters in their own stories. Their screen time is limited, their backstories are rushed through in quick exposition dumps, and their perspective is almost never the focus. The narrative simply doesn't have room for a fully fleshed out antagonist when it's so busy servicing the hero and setting up the next 5 movies and 3 TV shows. The villain's role is to facilitate the hero's character arc, and once that job is done, they're disposed of. This is especially true in the post-Endgame era. The multiverse saga had the potential to introduce truly terrifying, world-ending threats. And it tried, with Kang the Conqueror. He was set up as the next Thanos. A villain so significant, he would define an entire phase of the MCU. We got glimpses of his potential in Loki, where He Who Remains was genuinely chilling and intriguing. But then what happened? The execution fell apart. Instead of building a singular terrifying threat, we got a confusing mess of variants, each one seemingly less competent than the last. The Kang we saw in Quantumania felt like a shadow of the character we were promised. He was defeated by Ant-Man and a swarm of intelligent ants. It completely deflated the tension and the stakes that had been so carefully built. It was a classic case of telling, not showing. We were told Kang was a big deal, but we were never truly shown why we should be afraid of him. Let's also touch on the redemption arc trap. Marvel loves a good redemption story. Loki went from a would-be world conqueror to a tragic, self-sacrificing hero. The Winter Soldier became a core Avenger. Nebula, Skrulls, even the Vulture got softened edges. While these stories can be powerful, they also create a problem. If every interesting villain is destined to become a good guy, who's left to be the actual villain? It robs the universe of permanent ideological opposition. Sometimes, you need a character who is just unrepentantly evil, someone who can't be reasoned with or redeemed. Think of the Joker in The Dark Knight. Part of what makes him so terrifying is that you know he will never ever change. Marvel seems hesitant to commit to that kind of pure antagonism, always leaving the door open for a face turn, which ultimately lowers the stakes. So, where does Marvel go from here? Is the villain problem fixable? Absolutely. First, they need to break the formula. Give us villains who aren't just evil mirrors of the hero. Let them have unique powers, goals, and most importantly, ideologies that fundamentally challenge our hero's place in the world. Dr. Doom isn't just a guy in a metal suit. He's a monarch who genuinely believes his totalitarian rule is the only way to save humanity. That's a conflict worth exploring. Second, let the villains win sometimes. Not necessarily the final battle, but let them score meaningful victories that have lasting consequences. Let them outsmart the hero. Let them dismantle the hero's life, challenge their beliefs, and force them to change. The threat needs to feel real, and the easiest way to do that is to show that failure is a genuine possibility for our heroes. And finally, commit. When you introduce a major villain like Dr. Doom or Galactus, don't rush them. Build them up over time, across multiple projects. Let us understand their philosophy, witness their power, and dread their arrival. Make them an event. Marvel proved they could do this with Thanos. They spent years seeding his presence, building the mythos around him, so that when he finally took center stage, it felt earned and monumental. That's the blueprint. They need to stop looking for shortcuts and get back to that patient, long-form storytelling that made the Infinity Saga so special. The heroes are only as good as the villains they face, and it's time for Marvel to give their heroes some truly great villains once again. What do you think? Who is Marvel's most wasted villain, and what would you do to fix them? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of comics and movies. See you next time.